you want to turn
You're talking and talk about it.
Psalm 1:1, but so that's the volume is a little loud. Psalm 1:1. Scott, thanks for picking this verse. Love this verse here. We're gonna go over this one throughout the month of August, and then we'll get to our text here. But yeah, let's go ahead and say it. Scott, any context on why you chose this verse, or just have always loved this verse? Does it have any personal significance for you, or just enjoy it?
No, it just seemed like a really great verse. I always loved it. You know, and it's like,
Yeah.
starting out the song, it's like, it's a one that you get you going.
Yeah. It's so much. If you break that apart, you see the I guess I'd say the digression of, if you walk in the counsel of the ungodly, now standing in the way of sinners, now sitting in the seat of the scornful. So it kind of unravels pretty quickly there. So you got to watch where you're walking, where you're standing, where you're sitting, all that. But yeah, it does. It does. And we want to certainly be that black man. So, all right, let's say reference. Here we go. Psalm 1:1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Psalm 1:1. Yeah, we're blessed by what we do. We're blessed by what we don't do. And there we're told what to avoid. Okay, let's go now to further back in the Old Testament, 2 Kings chapter 12. It is good to be back in person. I see guys with us. Appreciate guys tuning in. I was on last week for a little while, and then we had some difficulties with the Zoom. But yeah, it's not the same as being here for sure. We were driving a lot last Saturday, and so I was trying to tune in a little bit, but just good to be back here. And it's amazing how dependent you get on this study. You feel like if you miss it, something is missing in your weekend, and so it feels right to be here today. Chapter 12, as we typically do, let's read. We're going to go from verse 1 to verse 15. And this is a passage I read a couple weeks ago, and so I've been meditating on it for a little while. And the Lord's used it in my personal life, so I pray it would be a help to you. We're gonna focus in on one specific word here, but let's read verse 1 to 15, and we'll just go around and read. If you don't feel comfortable reading, you just pass to someone else there. And I don't know, Guy, if you're at a place. I know last week when I was driving, if someone asked me to read, I couldn't read. So if you want to, I'll start and then I'll give a little pause if you want to read, Guy. If not, I'll just pick it right up. And we'll keep rolling. So let me start with verse 1. Go to Jesse. We'll work around. Steve, if you want to read, and then I'll pick it up again. All right, verse 1. In the 7th year of Jehu, Jehoash began to reign, and 40 years reigned he in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba.
And Jehoash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him.
The high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places.
And Jehoash said to the priests, all the money of the dedicated things that is brought into the house of the Lord, even the money of every one that passeth the account, the money that every man is set at, and all the money that cometh into any man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord.
Let the priest take it to them, every man of his acquaintance, and let them repair the breaches of the house, whosoever any breach shall be found.
But it came about that in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired the damages of the house.
Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest and other priests and said unto them, why repair ye not the breaches of the house? Now therefore receive no more money of your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house.
Steve.
The priests agreed that they would not collect any more money from the people, that they would not repair the temple themselves.
But Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in the lid of it and set it beside the altar on the right side as one cometh into the house of the Lord. And the priest that kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord.
And it was so, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put up in bags and told the money that was found in the house of the Lord.
And they gave the money being told into the hands of them that did the work, that had the oversight of the house of the Lord. And they laid it out to the carpenters and builders that wrought on the house of the Lord. And to the masons and to the hewers of stone, and to buy timber and hewed stone to repair the breaches of the house of the Lord, and for all that was laid out for the house to repair it.
Howbeit there were not made for the house of the Lord bowls of silvers, snuffers, basins, trumpets, and vessels of gold, or vessels of silver, of the money that was brought into the house of the Lord.
So they gave that to the house, where they gave that to those who did the work, and with it they repaired the house of the Lord.
Moreover, they reckoned not with the men into whose hand they delivered the money to be bestowed on workmen, for they dealt faithfully.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for reading, guys. All right, some questions we want to answer as we go through the study today. We're going to focus in on the word breaches that's found in this passage several times. Now, I'm not sure if you had a chance to count as we were going through it, but any guesses on how many times we find the word breaches?
7.
Can you point out where they're at? Because I got 6. I got 6. All right, let's start. I think 12, right? Is that, did you find something?
Well, yeah, but before that.
Okay, let's back up and go the other
Verse
way.
6,
Okay, verse 6.
once.
Yep, it says the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. Okay.
7.
Yep.
Why repair you not the breaches? And then at the end, but deliver it for the breaches of the house.
Okay, so twice in verse 7. Good.
Verse 8, once.
Good. Verse 12, is that the next one?
Maybe. Yeah, I guess so.
First repair the breaches. Okay. Yeah, so I had 6, he got 7, but if you recount it, that's fine, whatever you get. We're going to emphasize that word breaches here this morning as it's found here in chapter 12. So let's talk about, what does that word mean? What does the word breach?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep, okay, there's once in verse 5. Good, very good. So what does the word breach mean? If we had to define that, what are we talking about this morning? What's this passage talking about? When you think about breach, we still use that word today, not often, but we use that in our conversations today. What's a breach?
Say an opening.
Okay, an opening, all right, and anybody else, synonym or a definition of that word?
Say to kind of break through something that's secure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an opening, and door is an opening, but you
Yeah,
can do that to a window or a roof.
yeah,
But it could also be like a breach of contact, like a rebellion
Yep.
or whatever.
Something that's supposed to be closed or.
Yeah,
yeah, that's good, yeah. Nick, you deal with IT,
Breaches of
security, that's what I say, security. I mean, that's a big part of your work is securing important information. So we're trying to avoid, it's something that we're trying to avoid, right? It's definitely not positive today. Breaches, I don't know if it's ever used in a positive context. It's always seen as something negative. So something that we would want to be secure, we would think it's secure, but then, and sometimes we almost find out too late that there was a breach, and how bad was that? How much was leaked? You know, what kind of information was lost through that? What was that information? So we're familiar with that term, like Jess was saying, breach of contract. The word there, if you were to look up the Hebrew behind the English, it does mean a gap or a leak, possibly in a ship or a building. So it's a breach is a gap or a leak possibly in a ship or a building. Now, what is the building here that is referenced in the passage? What building has some breaches in it that are in need of repair in this passage? What's the building? The temple, right? Yeah, the house of God. It's a temple. And we can make some applications. We're going to get to that here in just a second. We can talk about the importance of repairing the physical house of God. We did a lot of that. We still are doing a lot of that. As a matter of fact, Al Hallberg, he's been out here literally working on cracks in the brick, and trying to get those things repaired. But I don't know that is the primary takeaway from this passage is, let's work on God's house. I think it is important to keep God's house looking good. I think there's a testimony there. We need to do our best. But I think maybe there's a deeper application. We now are the temple of God, right? As New Testament believers, we understand that it's not so much about a structure. Praise God for the structure, but we are the temple of the Holy Ghost. So we're going to apply this to us and get real close in our application to us as New Testament believers, that God is in us. We are the temple. And sometimes there's breaches, and identifying those breaches and dealing with those breaches is really important. So that's what it means. Now, let me just give a couple illustrations. So the definition there, gap or leak, possibly in a ship or building. Haven't been on a lot of ships, been on some little boats here and there. But Scott, you would understand this. You gotta keep up with things. A little crack, a little chink in the boat can lead to a major issue. You got a leak in the boat. You got to get that fixed in a hurry. And I was in a leaky boat not too long ago doing some fishing with my nephews, and it's just a matter of time until you're in sync. You might have 15, 20 minutes depending on how many people are in that. But it's, and why does that happen? Because of neglect, disrepair, just oversight. So I think that we recognize when it comes to the physical world, we got to keep up with things. I'm thinking about my house, and every structure you deal with, there's always something. You have to keep up with physical structures. When Steve and I were talking about this building, he had encouraged us to start what he called a capital improvement fund. And basically the idea is that, and we follow that advice, is to lay aside money because that things are going to break down. I mean, if you prepare for that in advance, you're going to be way ahead. If you just expect everything to function properly and never have an issue, you're fooling yourself. So we know that it just happens through time. And our house we live in now, most of you know that we've completed a pretty major project on the foundation that was completely unexpected. Behind the paneling, we discovered what I call a major breach in the foundation of that home. And when you find that, you're like, well, we could just put the paneling back on. We could just forget, just act like it's not there. But in doing that, you're just going to deal with a bigger problem down the road. And that wasn't a fun day when I pulled it off and realized we got a major issue that's going to take a lot of money and time and energy to fix this. So if we were to remove the veneer or the paneling of our lives, because we do pretty good at kind of, painting up the exterior and trying to put forth, the image that at least we appear to have things together. But if we take away that paneling, what is the true condition of our temple today? Are there some breaches? Are there some gaps? A crack leads to a gap. And if you get enough gaps in the structure, eventually it will fall. So dealing with the small cracks in our lives, this book I brought with me, I'm not going to read it to you, but we're going through this book for the second time. A book's good when you read it once and you read it a second time. And this is mainly for married couples. We do a coffee date every Thursday night. And we read through this book once. This is by James Dobson. And I wouldn't endorse 100% of the book. I don't think there's any book besides the Bible that we endorse 100%. but it has been very good for us, called Nightlight. And it's written by James Dobson and his wife. But what I love about this book is you read a verse, you read a short devotion, and then there's some questions, and they're called Just Between Us questions. And the way that they are worded, it initiates great conversation. So we'll read one of these or maybe two of these on Thursday night, and then we just talk. I mean, it just gets conversation going. But this one is entitled Roman Bridges, and he was talking about these bridges built in Europe by the Romans in the 1st and 2nd centuries. And he said some of these bridges still stand today. And basically, you know, the way they were built to last. And he was talking about how in marriage we need to build things so that they last. But he came to a question. He said his third question was, do we see any cracks, even tiny ones, beginning to appear in our marriage, and what can we do to repair them? And that led to some great conversation about just some areas in our marriage that we realize, okay, there's maybe a crack there, and how can we adjust to fix this crack before it becomes a gap and before it becomes a major issue. And so I was thinking about in question 3, this passage is talking about literal gaps in the structure, the foundation, the block work, the wood, whatever it is, the mortar of the temple. But we want to apply this in a non-literal sense. So what are some non-literal but equally important breaches that we might deal with today? Okay, so let's try to apply this. So I've already mentioned one. Sometimes there are breaches in a relationship between a husband and wife, between a parent and child. If you have kids, you realize that there's certain times where it's like, man, there's something between me and this child. There's something that is not right, and there's a crack there. It could be, between you and a church member, it could be between you and a coworker or a classmate, or, there's a lot of applications on the relationship, but sometimes there's a crack that could lead to a gap, which becomes a big issue. So outside of relational breaches, what are maybe some other breaches that we might deal with and we could apply this passage to?
A breach in between them. Well, it was always our fault, but between us and God.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly right. There could be a breach between us and the Lord. Maybe we're not as close to Him, or there's a wedge, that has appeared in our relationship with God. Yeah.
Following on that is just like there's been numerous conservative either social media apps or other things that I'll get in for news or information. And then along with that, there's other things that are just that pop up that are inappropriate. And as much as I like having the other things, I've had to delete numerous times. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, you just can't have that in because that's the thing that causes the gap.
Yeah,
just sit there and like distracting that.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't need it. I don't want to have to look at this for seeing the other things.
Yeah. It can be just a breach in our personal holiness. The devil's he is just looking for a crack. Someone said he'll check it back to 1,000 nights in a row just to find the one night you left it open, or left it cracked, just to get a toehold, just to get a foothold in your life. So we have to be very vigilant. So yeah, it could be something in a matter of just personal holiness. There might be a breach of holiness in our lives. Starts small, gets big. Anybody else? You think of the word breach or a gap. What's some other ways we might apply this passage that we started?
I like the, you said one of the definitions of breach is talking about a ship, and I can't stop thinking about that. Maybe some people start to see cracks in their ship, and they see a shinier ship, and they say, I want to get out of this one and go over there.
Yeah.
And you relate that to, relationships or a person, like, maybe you're jealous of what other people have, you're not satisfied or content with what you have. So there's your actual living style or your situation that you're in, the way you're brought up, maybe you just are kind of coveting maybe something nice that someone else has, or instead of taking the effort to repair the crack or
Right.
leak, you just
Right.
abandon ship.
Yep, that's well said in the passage. I think it fits right in that it wasn't, let's destroy the temple and rebuild. It was just repair what you have. And that, yeah, sometimes we're looking for something else and God's saying, no, just focus on what you have and repair that and make that good. Yeah, that's a great point.
Through, sometimes it's our fault, sometimes it doesn't have to be, but just a lack of understanding or a lack of wanting to understand. Yeah, is our fault, but, yeah, if we don't know, we don't know, but.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the breaches in my life have to do with where I've been wounded by other people, and then I overcompensate. You know, I mean, that leads to all sorts of other problems.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a common thing to adjust, overcompensate, over adjust, and then end up at another extreme because of what we've gone
the
through.
devil's right there.
Yeah,
Causing.
yeah, he's trying to hurry that process along and move as much mortar as he can. Yeah. All right, so we could, again, lots of ways. You could be a breach in confidence in the Lord or faithfulness. We see that, man, I'm just not as faithful in my Bible reading, my prayer time, my church attendance. Just those little compromises, those little cracks, catching them early on. Early detection really important with this. So that gives us some ways we can apply it and let the Spirit apply it to you as we go through this. Now, number 4, we'll take a little more time because this is where we're going to dig into the passage. What is it going to take to repair the breaches in our lives? So whatever breach it is, let the Spirit apply it. But how are we going to repair the breaches in our lives? So I know that this is not a common passage that we just read, but do you see anything from this passage? The king here, he's actually very young when he becomes king. If you would read chapter 11, I'm trying to find the exact verse there. I think he was just like 7 years old or something down when he became king. No, it's right at the end of chapter 11. Yeah, 7 years old was Jehoash when he began to reign. So he's just a boy. So Jehoash is the king. And then we read the name Jehoiada. He was his personal teacher, mentor that helped him with the decisions he's making as the monarch here.
Isn't that significant though?
Yeah.
To repair breaches, we generally need help.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of this is going well, but
Yep.
obviously.
Would you say then?
Generally, well, in my case, to repair breaches, I need the help of others.
Yep.
Because I don't, physical ones, what you're talking about, I might think straight, but back to relational ones, I don't generally think straight. I generally think of the other person's problem, or the other person is the problem, or the other person, it's not me. I mean, I know better, but when I get in that mind, I know better mentally, but my heart doesn't know that well. So I need another person, and he needed the priest to tell me, or pretty well tell him what to do.
Yeah, we need trusted spiritual advisors that will help us with these issues. Being humble and honest enough to admit, hey, I have an issue. I don't know how big the issue is yet. When we have the crack in the wall, I'm calling professionals. Say, come in. What are we dealing with? What are we looking at? People that deal with this kind of thing all the time. So a lot of wisdom in that. So I think he's touched on one right there that if we're going to repair breaches, it's going to take a team effort. It's going to require the help of God and other strong Christians to get this thing fixed. I mean, once I got the estimates, then I called the real professional, my dad, and said, hey, can you come help me? So I didn't tackle that myself. You got to get somebody involved in helping you that knows what they're doing, that has, they're in touch with the Lord, has good spiritual wisdom. What else do you see in the passage that will help us to repair breaches in our lives?
How old did you say he was when he became king?
7.
So
Yeah.
in verse 6, it says he came about in the 23rd year of his. Right. So I don't know what the math is, between
30.
7 and 23.
Okay, I'm sorry, he's
So
30
between-
now, but yeah.
Yeah, so between 7 and 23 years, okay,
Yeah.
they collected money and did not repair the damage. Something tells you they knew the damage was there. It was
Yeah.
pretty obvious. So I think recognizing damage and
Yeah.
actually accepting, like you said, we could either cover this up,
Yeah.
we know about it, cover it up.
Yeah.
But we've got to do something about it. But what were they doing with the money for that amount of time? So what are you
Yeah.
doing about the damage and the time you're not repairing it, but collecting the resources to do so?
Isn't procrastination the best answer?
Yeah,
Well, some people say, don't tell me about the problems, I don't know about it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, that's true too.
yeah, this is not a real good policy or principle to live by in your life.
I'd be like,
I
you're
know.
going to Sheila and saying, hey, there's in the basement, there's some, hey, don't tell me.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah. And it's, we don't know why the priests didn't do it. Maybe they just knew this was gonna require a lot of work, a lot of time. They didn't want to touch it. It doesn't really tell us why they didn't do it. Some of it may have just been very selfish. They wanted the money for themselves. I don't know. The top of this section in my study Bible says the faithless priest. So maybe it was a lack of faith that we're going to have the resources to get this fixed. But for whatever reason, they did not do what they've been told to do for a lot of years. Let me go to Scott now.
I just, in verse 7, I think things to watch for is like, the king, he called the priest and said, hey, why is this not been done? So it just takes somebody that discerns and is diligent to call things to account.
Yeah, he was overseeing this and was inspecting the work that was supposed to be done, but you need somebody to step up and lead the way and say, there's an issue and we've got to deal with this, no matter how expensive or how involved this is. He was a good leader, though he was still pretty young. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I don't necessarily see anything I can pick out in here, but sometimes, a lot of times, restoration is yourself.
Yeah.
No one, because you might not want to tell anybody what's going on.
Yeah, and I like what Jehoiada does in verse 9. He gets creative in his fundraising, if you know that's probably the wrong term, but collecting the resources to get this done. It wasn't working the other way. I mean, Jehoash had told them clearly, repair the breaches. They had plenty of time. They did not do it. He tells them again, he calls them out. Why did you not repair the breaches? Verse 8, the priestess said, okay, we're not going to take the money, but we're also not going to repair it. I mean, they basically just said no to the king. We're not doing this. Well, Jehoiada then realized, okay, we have to get this done. This is what the king demands. This needs to be done. And so then he came up with a new way to collect additional money, puts the box, bored a hole in this chest, and people gave money. And as the money came in, then they gave that to the builders and they, the masons, the hewers of stone, and they got it done. But I think that he's an example of somebody that did step up and he took the initiative to get this thing going. So we need some people like Jehoiada that help do that. Anything else that stands out in the passage as far as repairing the breaches? I think we've said it's going to take teamwork. It's going to take awareness and action. It's going to take some determination. Anything else that comes out?
Well, it obviously involves resources.
Yeah.
Money, time.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of resources. I mean, that project that we did on our basement was probably about $5,000 to get that done, which was about half of what the estimates were, and it was done the right way. But it takes time, it takes effort. If your marriage is struggling, go into a marriage retreat, or if you're having an issue with a child, that's the time that's needed to talk through that. Maybe it's something else, but it could even be something physical. We were mainly talking mental, spiritual, but there's times when your body tells you, hey, there's something wrong, and you need to try to fix this. And I'm not a specimen of health at all. but I'm trying, this week I've been trying to do better, you know, because I know I have a responsibility to steward my health. And, you know, if you let something go long enough, it becomes a bigger issue. So there's just a lot of ways you can apply this, you know, in our personal lives. But I mean, there needs to be awareness, action, determination, teamwork. All those are critical in repairing breaches.
One other thing is it's kind of silent on it, but it is stated about the priest just saying, no, we're not gonna do it. It's like, they had a prominent position around there, and there was a number of them, and you know there's other talk going on. You still have to have if you're gonna do something that's right, you still have to drive ahead, even though there's others that are in positions of leadership that are, you know, seemingly opposing.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that's for that strong determination that we're gonna get this fixed. No matter what happens, we gotta get this done.
You know, I lost the reference, I was just reading the reference about, it said something about a outcome of this was they found in the book of the law. I think that. I mean, I just thought it caught my eye. I don't know where I went.
I'm gonna go to that passage at the end here if we have time.
Oh,
That's
okay.
actually that's a different repairing. That's a later project
Oh, okay.
than this one.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a separate repair that happens
I
down the
don't know where
road.
I
So
lost it, but those are,
Yeah.
I studied by the way.
sometimes you find things when you're repairing that, you know, are worth the effort and
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Okay, yes, okay.
It's good. We'll get there in just a second. So, Steve, I think you're gonna say something there as well, or?
Another source of breach that happens in my life a lot is just a lack of perspective. So with 4 boys, our house has and often does look like a total disaster.
Yeah.
You know, there is running all over the place. And then we'll go to a small group study in another person's house and go, you know, wow, our house looks really bad. You know? And you get so used to the way it looks.
Yeah.
You just lose perspective, and it takes, you know, takes a little bit of a jolt to give you,
Yeah.
you know, some insight.
Yeah.
Do something about it.
Yeah, it's well said. You know, I
It's the way
think,
sin works too.
yeah,
You know,
it
if you
is.
sit and sin for a while,
Yeah.
it's not all that bad. And then, the devil puts a little bit more sin, and
Yeah.
after a while, it doesn't look that bad.
And you can compare to somebody else, like, well, you know, at least my breaches aren't as bad as that guy's, or that, you know, you always find somebody a little bit worse than you, but you need somebody that will come like Joash and say, look, this is a major issue. You know, I don't like when people say that, but I'd rather them tell me up front, this is what you're looking at, you know. Think of Joe's mom, and the doctor just said, this is a major problem. Here's what you're looking at, you know, surgery, a week in the ICU, 18 months recovery, and just said that this is, you know, you don't want somebody that's going to sugarcoat it. Tell me the truth of what we're looking at. So, yeah, I think, you know, we need that often. We get used to those breaches, and
You gotta justify your trash, doesn't smell anymore. The
yeah,
waste management guy told Ash, it said, it would be cool to be a trash guy for one day, just to like, go through that job. And just, no, it's more horrible, but he probably was,
yeah,
So you,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, smell.
Yeah. So let's move on. As we're moving to the last question here, it's just going to be a personal question. I want to share this. So many of my illustrations, I guess, go back to things I experienced as a kid and didn't really understand the significance of what I was going through at the time. But you know, I was thinking about Jehoiada and how creative he was with coming up with a way to fix this problem there in the temple. And my dad, he worked at a factory for a lot of years, and then he switched jobs and started out on his own. He's been doing construction for a long time now. But as a boy, he would drive like 45 minutes to a factory. He was a welder, and then he switched to being just a machinist there at the place where he worked. But he was, and as Christian, you would appreciate this, but he was on a lot of different shifts, and some of those were really hard on the family. And the hardest one, I think, on the family was second shift, because during the school year, we were gone all day. And then sometimes we'd see him, but sometimes we wouldn't at all because he would leave before we got home from school. And my dad just felt like if he was going to influence and train his sons, he had to have time with them. And homeschooling was somewhat of a new concept at that point. I mean, people were doing it, but not as much as today. And so he made a decision that even though this isn't really the direction we were planning to go, we're gonna try homeschooling because I have to be with my kids. And so we would sometimes do our schooling a little bit later so we could be with dad when he was home. And he was creative because he was seeing there's starting to be a breach between me and my boys. And we have to sometimes become radical in our decisions to fix that issue. So I appreciate him doing that. And I'm thankful that he was willing to make some decisions that were important for all of us. And I think that whatever you're dealing with, it's going to take the Lord's leading, and it's going to take some intentional decisions on your own. Number 5 is, do you have a personal breach? I'm always amazed how God will take a passage. Like I know what my breaches are. I know what my besetting sins, and I know where I struggle. I know where the cracks continue. It's like it's there, and it comes back. But I'm amazed how the Holy Spirit applies this to each of our lives. So maybe today you can do some repairing and start the process. If it's a mental thing, or it's emotional, physical, relational, whatever it is, the Lord can help you with that. But it's going to require taking action, getting other people involved. It's going to take determination. It's going to take a lot of effort and time, but well worth it if we'll invest. Now, the conclusion of this, as Jim mentioned, turn over to 2 Kings chapter 22. Because as I was researching this, I discovered there was another king, name started with J. He was 8 years old when he began to reign. And he had to deal with the same issue. And I won't read all this, but look down at verse 5. Same thing, he talks about collecting the money so that then they could deliver it into the hands of the doers of the work, that have the oversight of the house of the Lord, and let them give it to the doers of the work, which is in the house of the Lord, to repair the breaches of the house. So the same house years later, and now repairs are needed again. So we're never really above this. We don't ever stop repairing, mending, fixing. It's what we do. Both in the physical world and also in the spiritual world. So this house, they got everything looking good in the days of Jehoash, and now there was a need for more repairs here with Josiah. And they did find the book of the law when they were doing that work there in the temple years later. So we have to stay at this. And as much as we like to just check it off and think, I'll never do this again, it's just an ongoing, second law of thermodynamics, things just fall apart and wind down. And so we have to constantly be addressing things in our lives, these breaches.
You have to value what you have, because whether it's your house or your body or your life, if you don't find value in that thing, you're probably not going to spend the time, resource, and effort to repair it. And I wonder if the people in that temple, I wonder what their perspective was on their own house, if it wasn't worth repair, because I wonder if they took better care of their own house than did the temple. I'm just wondering what their thought was on that, why they didn't find it worthwhile to address that.
That's so well said. That we'll put money, we'll put time into things that we value. And I think that for these priests and for these other people, they just didn't see the value in God's house like they should have. So whatever we're investing in, we need to recognize how important and valuable that is to us. Yeah, that's a really good point. I thought it was interesting in chapter 12 too, that Nate read the verse 13, says they didn't make the vessels of gold, silver, the bowls, But it's kind of like they had to prioritize. And what's the point of, I guess, making or repairing these things inside the temple if the temple structure itself is going to collapse because of disrepair? You have to prioritize. And sometimes you put other things on hold because that's not as important as this big issue that I'm dealing with, and learning to, yeah, that's important, but not as important as this. And they kind of had to prioritize based on the resources they had available. Anything else? I think we've dissected the passage and we got a lot of good applications from it.
Well, I mean, I think of the Lord's Supper, tomorrow, as well. And I just kind of went back to first, was it Corinthians chapter 11, where it's talking about, but let a man examine himself so that he may eat of that bread and drink of that cup, and again, we need to, examine our own condition, to make sure things are good, so we can participate in the Lord's Supper. Because if we're doing that, knowing that, hey, there's a gap, there's a leak here, and you're not paying attention to it, I mean, that's sin.
That's good. Yeah, let a man examine himself. Yeah, now that we've had those foundational issues, like I'm just constantly like looking at the walls, like it's a little crack, and probably what I'm doing is every year is just, if I see any kind of cracks, I'm dealing with it because I don't want it to become a major issue like this other one was. And I think sometimes we just get too busy to do the examination that we need to.
Also, sometimes, like it's already been referenced, sometimes you can't see
Yeah,
you yourself,
Right.
can't see the cracks.
Yeah.
I just had some building inspections done, and, the inspectors, looked fine to me, and they came back with a laundry list.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, I know the experts.
Yeah. Hard to self-evaluate. Yeah. Anything else? Pray. Okay, let's pray. Ask the Lord to help us with this. Lord, we thank you for the text that we were able to study this morning. Certainly there's more to it, but you've given us enough to meditate on. And Lord, help us now to take some action steps. This is not going to happen on its own. It's going to take some hard work. It's going to take some investment. It might even take some finances. But Lord, I pray that we would value what you've given to us, our own personal health, both physical and mental, or the relationships you've blessed us with, that be marriage or parenting relationships. Maybe it's relationships within the church, outside of the church, maybe it's neighbors, coworkers. Lord, may we value those relationships. In so much that we would do the examination, that we would recognize where those breaches may be and make every effort possible to fix those things. And Lord, would you give us the discernment that's needed, give us the determination that's needed. And Lord, maybe others don't feel like it's important as these priests, but Lord, may we do what you put on our hearts to do. And I pray, God, that we can prioritize and see what is most important. Forgive us, Lord, for overlooking things and pushing things aside. Lord, thank you for your house. Thank you for, Lord, this place where we can worship and we can praise and we can pray. And Lord, thank you for even just the application as far as the work done on this place. And I praise you for that. We ask, Lord, that you would guide the rest of our day. I pray that you'd be close to us. And Lord, give us wisdom that we need as we continue to serve you. Bless our day tomorrow. I pray you guide in every part of it. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the input. Those on us.